The Stiperstones Ridge runs for 6 miles from Pontisford Hill in the north to Heathmind in the south. It has internationally important wildlife habitats and provides walking, cycling and riding opportunities for thousands of people every year. It once had Europe's biggest lead mine. It's even said to be where the devil sits when he visits Shropshire. It truly is one of the jewels in Shropshire's crown. The Stiperstones is also a central part of Shropshire Wildlife Trust's work. Let's find out why.
The Stiperstones became a central part of the work of the Shropshire Wildlife Trust in the mid-90s. Around about that time, the Stiperstones, part of the Stiperstones that you see in front of you there, was acquired for the nation by Natural England. But it became fast apparent that it wasn't big enough. If we're going to do stuff for wildlife, we've got to have much bigger places, much bigger spaces. You're looking at some 60% species decline in the last 20 to 30 years across England, and you're not going to solve that with small nature reserves. So the Stiperstones represented one of the first living landscapes, the first big-scale landscape project that the Wildlife Trusts in England, indeed the UK, put into place. And we began to reconnect not just the heart of the Stiperstones there, the Devil's Chair, but the whole 6 miles, the whole length of the Stiperstones Ridge. And part of the approach the Trust has taken is to piece large chunks of the landscape together through land purchase. I mean, where possible, it would rather work in many ways with local landowners and farmers and local interests to sort of restore wildlife back to its former glory. But here it was absolutely essential that we purchased parts of the land. So here we are on Nipstones now. This was covered in conifers up until the late 90s. And in the near foreground, the remains of Jubilee wood, which have been largely removed in the last 10 years. And as your eye goes to the horizon towards the Devil's Chair, to the right-hand side of that would have been woodland in the mid-90s as well. So we're looking at wholesale removal of conifers that were worth very little in terms of money and very little in terms of value, either wildlife wise or landscape wise. An important part of the work was totally funded by the public and appeal, and I think it just goes to show the passion that people have for this particular wonderful area of Shropshire. Yeah, as a landscape, the Stiperstones and all around it are millions of years old, yet what we've got in front of us now is a landscape that is actually sort of far newer than that, if you like. The heather moorland here would not have been in quite the same shape, say 400 or 500 years ago. There'd be more woodland cover, deciduous woodland cover, coming up onto the ridge. What we're looking at now, though, is a landscape that's been recovered from the 1960s, when more recently mankind put conifers onto the landscape in a failed attempt to try and make money out of a landscape that couldn't cope with those sorts of trees, and also increasingly eroded the natural landscape, the heathland landscape that you see now, eroded it with intensive agricultural reseeding and refertilising. So now we've got a landscape that was, as I said, made in the 60s, eroded through the 70s, 80s and 90s, and now, following the work of the Trust and indeed Natural England and the Forestry Commission, we've begun to restore something that is many hundreds of years old and goes back to, as I say, millions of years old in terms of the rocks we have in front of us. So starting from the Stiperstones in the mid-90s, the ambition of the Trust, indeed the ambition of many people, individuals, organisations all around here, is to take things a step further. Here we are in the marches, those borderlands between England and Wales. And what we really need to do is to take the sort of wilderness opportunity that we have here, that bit of wildness, and take it out much further, right into Wales, into the edges of the West Midland conurbation, up and down north-south of Offa's Dyke here, and make it a much bigger Wild Marches initiative. With a bit of vision, a third more nature is entirely possible.